Well, the esteemed speakers, I think, covered the ground admirably, talking about the peace process, its national and regional, and in certain ways international context, expressing their hopes and fears for the likely outcome in Turkey, in Rojava, and indeed for the Kurdish question in the wider context of the Middle East. I'm trying to, or I will try here in this very brief presentation, because time is overrun and I have to be brief. I would like to focus on aspects of it which were not covered in these presentations, and in a sense to look at a little bit critically on the obstacles to the peace process, both on the Kurdish side and also on the Turkish side. As Guy Basharan rightly pointed out, the peace process in Turkey has a longer history. And the conditions which were expressed or explained in Mr. Öcalan's letter have a longer history. As a matter of fact, when I met Mr. Öcalan in December 1998 in Rome, the subject of our discussion was exactly this issue. And in that discussion, Mr. Öcalan very, very clearly said, and this was a discussion which lasted for 5 hours we had there. And he very clearly said, basically said that, look, the armed struggle is in a dead end. And he said, in a dead end. It has entered a dead end. Neither the Turks, the Turkish state, nor the Kurdish movement, neither of us are going to prevail. This is a war which is not going to have a winner. Therefore, we must try to find a way of getting out of this deadlock. Yeah. You see, that was basically the discussion. And that was in December 1998 when he was in Italy. All right? And I was, rather was surprised and also, in a way, amused that when I read his letter to his party and to the, if you like, the leadership of his party in Kandil Mountains, I saw the similar issues are coming up. But this time, he's basically saying that the geopolitical conditions in the region have fundamentally changed. The ideological processes and settings have fundamentally changed. As a result of this, the strategy of armed struggle, which was adopted in 1984, has lost the conditions of its possibility. That was the fundamental issue that you get that. And I totally agree with that. And by the way, I also want to mention one important factor. When I had discussion with him, I told him that would the PKK have ever, resorted to arms, an armed struggle, if there was not 1980 or 81 coup d'etat in Turkey? He thought about it and said, I doubt it. You see, he said, I doubt it. In a sense that I want to say that it was not a matter of choice. It was not a matter of following an ideological lead after a fashion that, you know, to go for armed struggle, but the armed struggle was dictated by the conditions in Turkish politics. That was fundamentally the issue which came across. Now, Mr. Rojhelat in the letter talks about the impossibility, or rather, better say, the undesirability of continuing the war. I mean, if you talk to leadership of the PKK in the mountains, they will tell you that we agree with it. We can continue for another 20 years. But whether this 20 years is going to get us anywhere or is going to get the Turkish state anywhere, we have serious doubts about it. So this is fundamentally the issue. But here, I think, after this letter, we have two narratives and two positions in Turkey. One is the narrative and position of the state, which argues for a Turkey without terror, you see. And then there is a Kurdish narrative and Kurdish position, which basically says that a democratic solution for Kurdish question and inside and in the context of a democratic republic in Turkey. Yeah. These two issues are very different, and they have very different conditions of possibility. In a sense, when I look at myself, I look at the Kurdish issue now, and the way that this peace process has brought about, what is brought about, I basically look at the peace process in Turkey as a democratic challenge of authoritarian limits of Turkish politics. This is what I fundamentally see this issue. Democratic a challenge of the authoritarian limits of Turkish politics. That is what fundamentally it is. So for Kurds, it is not a struggle for a Turkey without a terror. It's a struggle for the solution, democratic solution of the Kurdish question, and also as a means, both, I mean, there is a double side to that. One side of it, the resolution of Kurdish question, and another side of it is being a means, instrument for opening up the political process in Turkey so that more than, you know, all the opposition, just Kurdish political parties, Kurdish forces being one of them, enter this political process and take part in democratic politics. But democratic politics, as we know, it requires juridical legal boundaries, and juridical legal boundaries are always set in the constitution of the state. Now, can we really talk about democratic game in Turkey within the boundaries, juridical political boundaries of the present constitution, or the way that the constitutional change in Turkey has been or being envisaged? Now, this is a question that I think is a strategic issue which we have to deal with in Turkey. Coming back to two narratives is that on the Kurdish side, we have to make a fundamental difference between accepting the end of armed struggle and laying down arms. These are two different things for Kurds. Accepting the end of armed struggle is not laying down arms. These are two different things. And laying down arms for Kurds is the end result and consequence of a democratic process of negotiation. And if this negotiation succeeds, by all means, let's say farewell to the arms and surrender our arms. But for this Turkish state, the situation is other way around. For the Turkish state, laying down arms is the precondition for negotiation. These two sides are very, very much apart here. I think what makes this situation, it is obviously in politics, is not a strange thing to be miles apart. And in fact, it is always possible to have negotiations, possible to, if you like, make concessions, get concessions, and so on. So important thing is actually for this process of negotiation at present to start. And so far, it has not started. This is one important issue. Now, what is here is that, from my point of view, is missing, is rather not taking into account changes that Turkish politics has undergone since July 15th of 2016, the military coup. We are dealing with a very different Turkey now than before July 2016. And this different Turkey is the setting for these negotiations. So we have to take that into consideration, right? What is very surprising, if we compare and contrast the present peace process or initiative to start peace process in Turkey now, in last February, and to 2013. In 2013, I was there witnessing, I was teaching in the university there, and I witnessed it. It was a relatively open democratic process. It was being discussed, there were seminars, there were meetings, interviews, debates. It was going on this issue. The students were involved, people in all walks of life were involved, politicians were involved. The issue was being hotly and very engagingly debated. This time round, there is a silence. There is a silence. There is no democratic debate on this issue. And for this, I am not just blaming the Turkish state, but I am also blaming the Kurdish movement. Kurdish movement has so far made no significant, plausible, if you like, direct effort for opening up this political process, this democratic process. And as a result of it, we see this silence has helped, from my point of view, it is helping more authoritarian politics than its democratic challenger or democratic alternative. For that matter, I think it is a strategic issue for the Kurdish question now to put on the agenda the opening up of democratic process in Turkey. That is more important than the fate of the leader, I'm sorry to say. That is more important than the ideology of the organization. That is the vital issue. That this issue, if it is fundamental issue of democratic politics in Turkey or a future democracy in Turkey, this has to be widely debated. There has to be forces of opposition, have to be directly and openly engaged in this debate. I think so far this has not happened, and this has helped this issue of two narratives to continue, and going apart and apart. Yesterday, again, as he remarked, that there was a very important interview by Abbas Vali. And it was a very long interview. If you cut it down, all of it, it will come, insofar as Turkey is concerned, it will come to one fundamental issue. And that fundamental issue is this, that peace process is being forced out of its past. It is being diverted from its past. And this, what is important is this, that this, if you like, this closure, this discursive closure on democratic debate, this situation that has been brought about in Turkey after this PYJ, after the initiative, this is helping this situation of the peace, if you like, initiative or peace process hasn't started. Let's say the plan, if you like, the desire, the initiative for peace, which has been declared. This is being diverted from its direct, if you like, role, and it is likely that it may not meet its intended objectives. Now, this is an important issue here, which Bassel here says that now that the situation has come to this, people must move in and take over. I think this is maybe a political party way of saying it. Thank you. A political party way of saying it, that the democratic process has to be opened and democratic process has to be kept, and it should be enriched. I think here the issue is here that Kurds have agreed, the Kurdish movement has agreed to this eventuality, that the strategy of armed struggle is dead for once for all. That is in this. But I am saying, and I am really sounding this alarm, that there are always a condition for its revival. There are always conditions for its revival. And these conditions very much depend on the attitude of Turkish state. To what extent Turkish state is going to genuinely embrace the peace process, and what is going to be done. I think there are a lot to be said about this. I think fundamental issue is now opening up the political process, allowing a genuine, rich, multifaceted, democratic discourse to proliferate and continue to develop in Turkey. Why I am saying that? This is the only way to keep the spirit of democracy in this process alive. And this is the fundamental objective. I think neither the ideology nor the leader are as important as this movement itself. And the movement can only thrive and go forward in a democratic condition. And that is the essential question at present in Turkey. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you so much.